Why I Believe in God, Part 5, the fifth 10 years of my life. In Part 1, I had looked at the first 10 years of my life when God kept me in a state of childlike bliss and innocence to protect me from the harsh world around me. In Part 2, I looked at the second 10 years of my life when God helped me make right decisions which created strong foundations for my future life. In Part 3, I looked at the third 10 years of my life, which I consider the years of divine providence, when God took care of my physiological and safety needs. In Part 4, I looked at the fourth 10 years of my life, which I consider the years of divine prosperity, when God took care of my love, belongingness, and esteem needs. In this Part 5, I will look at the fifth 10 years of my life, which I consider the years of divine achievement, when God took care of my self-fulfilment needs. Let me tell you my story. At the age of 40, I was at the height of my career as a software developer. However, I soon went through a period of discerning about which direction my career ought to move towards. I was aware of young graduates that had just joined my team, and in comparison to them, I could no longer consider myself a youngster. I was also aware of the new trends within the IT sector, namely to outsource software development jobs abroad or into the cloud. I had to make a decision. I asked the good God to help me decide between a career in software management or software architecture. I did an introspection of personal traits, and I concluded that I was not cut out to be a manager. I simply did not want to introduce stress in my life, and I did not have the personality to be firm, decisive, and demanding in the corporate world. It is for this reason that I decided to head towards a career in software architecture. To my surprise, my line manager was very supportive and found me an opening on a project that was just being mobilized. A senior manager on that project was not so sure of my abilities. He questioned my resolve and reluctantly let me join the project. I was now put under the care of a senior architect who guided me in writing my first 2 key software design documents over the course of that year. That really gave me the assurance I needed to know that architecture was the right path for me. As soon as I turned 41, I was desperate to be formally recognized within the architecture department. But try as much as I could, the path was a long, winded one, as it never is easy within a big American corporation to break the glass ceiling and to get a career promotion. 3 or 4 months went by, and in desperation, I felt something within me so strong telling me to quit my lucrative job. And so, one cold December day, just before Christmas, I resigned. I was now jobless at the age of 41 and was at the very bottom rung of the achievement ladder. I say, only a fool will choose to leave a lucrative job in pursuit of an aspiration and achievement. I asked myself, what caused me to resign? Why did I choose to ignore the advice of my work colleagues who asked me to stay on? Was I able to see the future? Did I know that the divine weaver was once again at work, weaving a backdrop that was to be stark, dull and grey, against which he could paint a beautiful scenery? It was a hard time for me, as I was without a job for 3 full months. In the first month without a job, I was still brimming with confidence. In the second month without a job, my confidence was getting knocked about and I was stumbling. In the third month without a job, I was flat out and was groveling with a begging bowl, looking for an end to my misery. On the good side, I used those 3 months to study and gain good foundations in the software architecture method. Finally, I got my break in software architecture in the 4th month since I resigned, and reality showed that I was at the bottom of a steep learning curve. Lucky for me, a senior architect gave me the mentoring and understanding of how architecture was applied in the real world. It was at this time that I had to relocate my family to be closer to work. We agreed a modest budget to buy a new home and looked at 3 properties. The first was a 3-bed all done up. The second was a 3-bed with a large extension but needed some renovation work. And the third was a very large 3-bed house with 5 spare rooms, and it needed complete renovation. Guess which one my family chose? They chose the third one because it was a huge property, it was a detached property, had a bit of land all around. So at the age of 42, I added this huge detached property as property number 8 to my property portfolio. Of course, I need to mention that it took my wife 5 years of renovation work to get all of the property into a livable state. By the end of 2.5 years with that organization, I had gained a strong foundation and was now a fully baked software architect. I once again had the confidence in my abilities, so when at the age of 44 I was made redundant, I took it in stride and received a handsome redundancy payment in return for the 2.5 years of service. After I was made redundant, I chose to move away from permanent roles for good and ventured into the world of contracting, where I became quite successful. My first year in contracting was back in London within the retail sector, and the next 2 years were with the finance and banking sectors. As I was being paid on a daily basis, I had to ensure that I was in good health, as I would not get paid if I was sick and absent. And also, I needed good health in order to travel to client sites. I started researching on what I needed to do in order to live healthily and came across this website called chrisbeatcancer.com. The message that I got from that site had such a profound effect on me that I decided that in order to promote good health, I would become vegetarian 90% of the time, and my main food intake would be carrot juice, salads, pulses, and leafy vegetables. This change in lifestyle was so dramatic that it made me feel, think, and act with the energy of a young 24-year-old. It was at this time that I also had the urge to visit Europe and began planning road trips. My first road trip was at the age of 44 when I drove with my family from London to Madrid. I spent 14 nights there and drove back. The next year at the age of 45, I made 2 similar road trips. One was into the beautiful French Alps and the other was just south of Barcelona, Spain. Having had a taster for road trips, I soon got addicted to them and decided to buy my third vehicle, which was a huge beast. It was a blue Land Cruiser, which was more roadworthy for these long journeys and at the same time gave my family the comfort and space that was much needed. At the age of 46, I did 2 epic road trips. The first was from London to Rome and back, spending 14 nights in Rome, and the second was a 4,285-mile round trip across the Iberian Peninsula. I left London and drove down along the east side of the Atlantic coast of France, Spain, and Portugal. I touched the tip of Gibraltar and then returned back along the west side of the Mediterranean coast of Spain and France. Life only got better and better for me. Why am I sharing all these details of my life? It is because my life is nothing short of a miracle that is unfolding in front of my eyes on a daily basis. It is a testimony to why I believe in God. As I end this 5-part series, I look back at the last 3 decades of my life. I notice a pattern which the Divine Weaver keeps weaving into my life. At the start of each decade, He knocks me off my comfort zone, strips me of my pride, and empties me of any self-conceit. And after he has done that, he positions me at the lowest rung of the next ladder that he intends me to climb. In my 20s, I was at the bottom rung of the providence ladder and had to take care of my food, shelter and clothing. In my 30s, I was at the bottom rung of the prosperity ladder and had to take risks in order to progress my career and increase my property portfolio. In my 40s, I was at the bottom rung of the achievement ladder and had to relocate my family and navigate through a career change. I think what carried me through was the fact that I had built my life on the three virtues of simplicity, humility, and trust in God. But I could so easily have got it wrong and done it so differently. It never occurred to me before, but as I reflect, I see similarities with the three temptations of Christ. In my 20s, instead of relying on simplicity, I could have built my life on prosperity and asked God to change the stones into bread. If I had done that, I would have succumbed to the sin of materialism. In my 30s, instead of relying on humility, I could have built my life on pride and said to God that I'm going to be jumping off these great heights and taking all these risks in growing my career and property portfolio, and that I would expect God to send his angels to protect me. If I had done that, I would have succumbed to the sin of utilitarianism. In my 40s, instead of trusting in God, I could have built my life on pleasure and said to God that I wanted him to help me achieve all of the world's achievements and pleasures. If I had done that, I could have succumbed to the sin of hedonism. As I kept pondering on what kept me from going astray, I received the answer through a weekly email from the Christian Network group at work. The Bible verse quoted was just the answer that matched my life so accurately. It was from Habakkuk, chapter 3, verses 17 to 19. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the hind. He makes me tread on high places. I checked out what exactly is a hind's feet, and I found out that a hind is a female deer that can place her back feet exactly where her front feet stepped, not 1 inch off. She is able to run with abandonment. In times of danger, she is able to run securely and not get off track. The hind is able to scale unusually difficult terrain and elude predators. This verse rung out so deeply in my heart, especially the line, "He makes my feet like the hind." I guess that I somehow intrinsically knew that in order to become like someone else, I had to walk exactly in the footsteps of that person, and hence at the age of 7, I can still remember myself in the playground walking behind a clever student and placing my feet exactly where he had placed his step in an attempt to become as clever as him. I guess in that same vein, while leading my life, I asked God to show me exactly where I needed to step, and I stepped right there. Some would see this as being limited in my freedom, but for me it was only liberating to know that I could run at high speeds like the hind in gay abandonment. I am reminded of Ravi Zacharias, who once said, "There is only one way to stand, and that is to stand straight. At any other angle, there is a good chance that I can fall." Thus, in order to climb the ladders of providence, prosperity, and achievement, all I had to do was stand straight, to find fresh reason simply to trust in God, despite whatever circumstances I might be facing, to always remember that God's ways are not man's ways, and that God does things in his own time. It is for this reason that I can wholeheartedly proclaim to all that my life was based on the three virtues of simplicity, humility, and trust in God, and that this is the reason why I believe in God, who is my strength, and so whether I am facing prosperity or adversity, health or sickness, I can find true bliss and abounding joy, and that he alone can make me tread on high places.